She said I was overthinking, the kind of word someone uses when they want you to stop noticing the things they're trying to hide. Yet that night, when her fingers brushed mine a little too slowly, when her eyes lingered a little too long, something inside me whispered that this moment wasn't as simple as she pretended it was. There was warmth there, yes. Attraction, too. But threaded beneath it all was a tension neither of us had learned how to name. She stepped closer, close enough that I could feel her breath skim my jaw, close enough that my doubts, those same doubts she told me to forget, came roaring back. Maybe it was the way she spoke, soft but trembling. Or the way she laughed, like she was trying to distract me from something she didn't want to say. Or maybe it was just the truth hiding behind her pupils, shining through every time she met my gaze and quickly looked away. We were standing in that familiar half-dark, where emotions feel louder and silence says too much. She touched my arm, light as a whisper, as if testing whether I'd pull back, or pull her closer. And for a heartbeat, we were suspended there, caught between a longing neither of us admitted and a fear she kept wrapped behind her smile. There was nothing obvious, nothing reckless. Just that quiet, forbidden pull that makes you wonder if the person in front of you is your comfort, or your warning. She told me I was imagining things. That I was reading too deeply into the late-night messages, the unspoken hints, the way her voice softened only for me. But if I was overthinking, why did her pulse jump when I said her name? Why did her eyes cloud when I asked if she was being honest with me? Why did it feel like she was running from something, or someone? And then she said it again. You're overthinking. But this time, her voice cracked. In that fragile silence, something changed. Something slipped. Something dangerous. And just as I opened my mouth to ask the question she didn't want to answer, she stepped back. Too quickly. Too afraid. Leaving me wondering whether my doubts were the problem. Or the only thing that could save me. The door was still half open behind her, letting in a thin slice of hallway light that cut across her shoulder. She stood there, arms wrapped around herself like she was suddenly cold, though the room was warm and her breath was unsteady. I took a step toward her, slow, careful, and she didn't move away this time. She just watched me, eyes flicking briefly to my mouth before she caught herself. Why did you step back? I asked softly. She swallowed, the movement small but unmistakably nervous. Because you were looking at me like you could see everything I'm trying not to say. I exhaled a shaky laugh. Maybe I can. She shook her head, but the hint of a smile tugged at her lips. Don't do that. Do what? That. Her voice broke again. Make it harder to pretend. The air between us tightened, not heavy, but charged, alive. I could feel her hesitation and her longing dancing right at the center of that space. When she reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, her fingers trembled. And for some reason, that tiny tremor hit deeper than any confession could. She stepped closer now, almost unconsciously, as if her body had decided before her mind did. The faint scent of her perfume drifted toward me, soft, warm, familiar. She looked up, slowly, breathing me in like she wasn't supposed to. You're not overthinking, she whispered. That's the problem. Her words were gentle, but they shook something inside me. I lifted my hand slightly, not touching her, just letting it hover near her arm so she could pull away if she wanted. She didn't. Instead, she leaned in by a fraction, her shoulder brushing the edge of my fingers. The smallest contact, but it felt like fire. What are you afraid of? I asked. Her eyes lifted to mine, glossy with a truth she clearly wasn't ready to release. Us, she breathed. Or what we turn into when we stop pretending this is nothing. My heartbeat stumbled. It's not nothing. You know that. Her lips parted, as if she wanted to argue, but no words came. Just silence, thick, fragile, intimate. She looked at me the way someone looks at the one thing they want but aren't sure they deserve. I moved a little closer, not touching her yet, but close enough to feel the warmth spilling from her skin. She didn't retreat this time. She held my gaze, steady and searching, as if waiting for me to say the thing she couldn't. And just when her breath hitched, the room shaking with unspoken possibility, she whispered, barely audible. Don't make me fall, if you're not ready to catch me. The tension snapped, not in release, but in a deeper pull. Dangerous, magnetic, undeniable. Her words hung in the air like a trembling note, still vibrating between us long after she stopped speaking. I felt them settle into my chest, warm, dangerous, impossible to ignore. She stood there, looking at me as if she had already said too much, or not enough. I didn't touch her. Not yet. But my hand drifted just a breath closer to hers, drawn by gravity I didn't have the strength, or desire, to resist. Our fingers didn't quite meet, but the heat radiating from her skin was enough to make it feel like they did. She exhaled shakily, eyes dropping to the floor. You don't understand, she murmured. Then help me, I said quietly. She laughed under her breath, but the sound was soft, trembling. If I say too much, you'll see me differently. I stepped closer, the floor barely creaking beneath us. I already do. Her gaze snapped back to mine, wide, almost frightened. Not of me, but of what she felt with me. She didn't step away this time. She just stood there, letting the nearness wrap around us like something we weren't sure we should want. For a moment, I thought she would lean in. Her face lifted, her lips parting just slightly. But then she blinked hard and turned her head, breaking the moment with a whisper of breath. She wasn't pulling away because she didn't want me. She was pulling away because wanting me scared her more than anything else. I can't, not right now, she whispered, pressing her palm to her forehead as if trying to contain something. Because of me? I asked. Because of everything. She paused, then added, because if we cross this line, there's no going back. I felt the weight in those words, heavy, honest, trembling. There was something she wasn't saying, something thick between the lines. A secret. A wound. Something she was guarding with both hands. My fingers barely brushed hers, an accidental, quiet touch. Her breath hitched. She didn't move her hand. You're shaking, I murmured. She whispered. You make it hard not to. Her eyes closed for a second too long, as if she was fighting the urge to lean into me. When she opened them again, her walls were up, not fully, just enough to keep her from breaking. You should go, she said softly, even though her voice betrayed her. Before I do something we can't take back. But she didn't move. Neither did I. We stood there, suspended in a moment that felt like it was one confession, one breath, 1 inch away from changing everything. The longing was unbearable. The restraint worse. And when she finally stepped back, it wasn't distance. It was self-defense. The room had shrunk around us, the warm light pressing against our skin like it wanted to witness what we couldn't say. Every breath between us carried weight, unsaid words, stolen glances, the ache of knowing what we wanted but couldn't yet claim. My hand hovered near hers, almost magnetic in its pull, and I could feel the tension vibrating through her every fiber. She wasn't just close physically, she was inside my head, a storm of emotions I couldn't contain. Her eyes met mine, and I saw the same battle I was fighting mirrored there, longing tangled with fear, desire caught in a cage of hesitation. She tilted her head slightly, letting the barest shadow of a smile ghost her lips. You make it impossible, she whispered, her voice low and tremulous. I don't want to make it easy, I said, though my voice betrayed the opposite. My heart hammered as if it was trying to speak for me, louder than any words could. We didn't move closer, but the space between us was electric. Every inch was charged with the potential for confession, for surrender, for crossing a line that neither of us knew if we were ready for. She laughed softly, a fragile sound that seemed to hang in the warm air. Why are you always seeing what I hide? Her hand twitched slightly toward mine, and I wanted to catch it before she pulled back. I didn't. Instead, I let the hesitation linger, letting the silence stretch just long enough that every heartbeat felt like a drum in my chest. You're not hiding from me, I murmured. Just from yourself. The words were reckless, too intimate, and I could see them land on her like a spark. Her pupils dilated, lips parted slightly, and for a fleeting second, the world outside the room disappeared. Her fingers brushed mine, barely a graze, but it was enough to ignite something deeper than attraction. She froze, and so did I. It wasn't a touch, not yet, but it felt like one had traveled through the space between us. Every sense heightened, the soft brush of air, the warmth radiating from her skin, the pulse at her wrist beneath my fingertips that I couldn't resist noticing. She exhaled softly, a whispered confession hidden in her breath. And just like that, the room fell silent, the kind of silence that holds everything, the desire, the fear, the ache, and leaves you poised on the edge of something inevitable. Neither of us moved. But the air had shifted. The tension had become a living thing, pressing, urgent, fragile, and utterly magnetic. And in that stillness, everything was about to break. The rain tapped against the window like a quiet symphony, soft but insistent, filling the room with a rhythm that matched our racing hearts. The warm glow of a single lamp cast long, tender shadows across the walls, tracing the outline of her face as she stood close to me, inches away, suspended in a breathless moment. The air between us was thick with every word we hadn't said, every secret we'd kept, every longing that had built up like pressure waiting to release. Her hand brushed mine, deliberate this time, and the touch was electric, setting fire to a trail of sensation that started in my fingertips and curled through my chest. Our eyes met, and I saw in her gaze the same hunger I felt, the same surrender. The hesitation we had held on to for weeks crumbled in the warmth of the room, replaced by a magnetic pull that neither of us could resist. Slowly, almost reverently, our foreheads met. The brush of her skin against mine carried the weight of months of longing, the quiet ache of emotions held back too long. Her breath melted into mine, soft and fleeting, yet charged with everything we had denied ourselves. Every heartbeat echoed in the hollow space between us, a silent rhythm that only we could feel. She pressed closer, and the world outside ceased to exist. The rain became a gentle drum, the lamp a halo around her, and the silence stretched into infinity. Our bodies spoke the words we couldn't form, the confessions, the promises, the fears, the surrender. A shiver ran down my spine as her hand traced the line of my arm, leaving trails of warmth that spoke of trust, of intimacy, of the unspoken. Time slowed. Every breath, every glance, every tiny brush of her skin was a conversation in itself. She tilted her head, letting her lips hover near mine without fully closing the space, a tease, a question, an offering. I leaned in, and for a heartbeat, it felt like our souls were communicating more than our bodies ever could. The tension, the desire, the surrender, it all collided in a perfect, fleeting balance. Her hands found my shoulders, my hands rested at the small of her back, and we swayed slightly, a motion dictated by the rhythm of rain and heartbeats rather than words. Nothing rushed. Everything lingered. Every subtle shift, every whispered intake of breath, every pulse shared across skin was enough to set the night ablaze. And in that suspended, electric space, we finally let go. Not in a moment of recklessness, but in a slow, deliberate surrender to the connection we had denied for too long. Our hearts spoke. Our bodies responded. Our souls recognized each other. And the world outside, the rain, the darkness, the waiting hours, simply faded away, leaving only us, drenched in warmth, longing, and the breathtaking poetry of finally being together. The first light of morning spilled through the half-drawn curtains, soft and hesitant, as if even the sun wasn't sure it belonged in the room. The air was heavy with warmth, the faint scent of rain lingering, mingling with the quiet residue of last night, whispers, touches, unspoken confessions. We didn't speak immediately. Words felt too fragile, too sharp, like breaking a crystal. Instead, we lay there, side by side, letting the silence stretch and bend around us. I traced the outline of her hand with my fingertips, careful not to disturb her, careful not to shatter the tenuous peace. She shifted slightly, half awake, hair falling across her face in a careless cascade. There was relief there, yes, and a kind of vulnerability I hadn't expected, like the storm inside her had softened just enough to let me in. She began, her voice barely above the hum of morning. She stopped, blinking at the ceiling, like the words she wanted didn't exist yet. I didn't prompt her. I let her find them, letting the silence carry our confession. The memory of the night lingered in her gaze, in the soft curve of her shoulders, in the way her breath caught when our hands brushed. We didn't need to relive it. We didn't need to define it either. There was a bond now, messy, tender, undeniable, that didn't fit neatly into labels. Love? Escape? Something in between? Perhaps it didn't matter yet. And then the knock came. Soft. Hesitant. But enough to pull us from the cocoon we built. She froze, and so did I, the sudden intrusion a reminder that the world beyond our room still existed. A slip of tension ran through her, guilt, fear, anticipation, and I felt it mirror my own. The mystery visitor would change nothing of what had happened, yet everything of what we now were together. She lifted her head, eyes meeting mine, unspoken questions in their depths. I didn't answer with words. Instead, I brushed the hair from her cheek, letting my hand linger, letting the small warmth reassure her. She exhaled slowly, leaning just a fraction into the touch. The knock came again. Life, outside, complicated, relentless, was calling us back. But the bond we had formed, the night we had surrendered to, the electric weight of connection, it was ours. That, at least, couldn't be taken away. And in the quiet aftermath, as rain faded into morning and the world pressed against the door, we both realized that whatever this was, it had changed us irrevocably. The days after that night were quiet, not empty, but filled with a different kind of closeness. We didn't need constant words, constant touches. Our connection had grown beyond gestures, beyond whispers. It was in the way she would catch my eye across a room, the subtle brush of her hand against mine as if to remind me we existed in the same space, breathing the same air. Every small moment carried the weight of what had passed, but also the soft promise of what could be. One evening, as the sun sank low, painting the room in amber, she leaned into me, forehead resting against mine. Her breath was steady now, calm, warm, matching my own. There were no questions, no confessions to be forced. We had already spoken the language of hearts, in silences, in touches, in the quiet intimacy of simply being near each other. I brushed a loose strand of hair from her cheek, lingering, letting the warmth between us settle like a blanket. "It's strange," she whispered, almost to herself. "How this, us, feels like home and storm all at once." I smiled softly, letting my lips brush the curve of her forehead. "Maybe that's the point," I murmured. "To feel everything, and still choose peace." Her eyes closed briefly, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. And in that moment, the tension, the longing, the hesitation, they all dissolved into something soft, profound, and steady. No more doubts. No more questions about what-ifs. Just the quiet truth that we had found something rare and worth holding. If the story had ended differently, if she had stepped back, leaving me with only memory, I would have carried her presence like a perfume. Lingering, intoxicating, impossible to forget. Every heartbeat would have remembered the night, every breath the closeness we shared. Even then, the story would have held beauty, a moment suspended in time, both tender and heartbreaking. But for us, the ending was gentle. Not a rush, not a climax, but a slow settling into a shared heartbeat. A choice to be near each other, to let the storm outside pass, leaving only warmth inside. A love that didn't scream or demand, but simply existed, persistent, intimate, and entirely human.